I mean, don't you think it would be concerning if out of 985 sociology papers in the American Journal of Sociology, American Sociological Review, and Social Forces, that between 1970 and 2020, that only 6 would even mention the word replication? I think that that would be fairly concerning, right? Like, that would
No.
be a problem kind of baked into the design.
No.
Now, that's not to say... No?
Correct.
Oh, you agree with me, right?
No, I don't agree with you.
So what's the issue with what I said there?
Well, because when you understand in the terms that I've laid out regarding the replication crisis, you realize, oh, this is like a nothing burger. People are just using this to wholesale discount entire fields of science. Can I ask who's calling?
Oh yeah, it's Carter again.
All right, Carter.
All
What
right.
do you want to talk about, Carter?
Yeah. Well, do you kind of recall what we had been talking a little bit about last time?
Mm-hmm. Why don't you give me a reminder?
Yeah. Okay. So we were talking about DEI and some of those studies, and I understand. I think the guy before you was going, and it was kind of the end of the night, and so by the time that I kind of called in, it seemed to me as if you were like a little bit like getting ready to wrap up, and so I got kind of booted kind of quick. But you sound like you're in a good mood, and I've looked into some stuff. I have some notes here from last time that I just wanted to run by. Stop me if you have any objections with what I'm saying. Okay.
Okay.
So first of all, you mentioned sociology as a field, and how you think that a lot of sociologists would know the difference between cause and effect, which on an abstract level, I'm sure that they probably understand what that is. But actually, sociology, compared with other scientific fields, has one of the bigger replication crises. So like an open science collaboration paper found in 2015 that only 36% of 100 psychology studies were replicated, and that when they were, the effect size dropped by about half. A Moody paper in 2022 found that out of 985 sociology papers, only 6 even mentioned the word replication. So to put that into perspective, social science consensus actually does use a lot more correlational studies. It's a lot harder to measure a lot of these
What
variables.
Is the replication crisis?
What?
What is the replication crisis to you? Because I understand that is a very specific thing that most people don't think about it the way that I do. So what do you think the replication crisis is?
Well, so it means that most of these studies can't be replicated, like I cited with the Open Science Collaboration paper in 2015.
That's not what that means.
So only 36% of 100 psychology studies were replicated, according to that paper.
Let me help you out. So the replication crisis is something that is well understood by modern science, in the fact that studies themselves, as we have learned more and more about the world, our knowledge becomes more and more specialized. We spend more time honing in on a specific thing that we do not know about. Take, for example, if we have, a particular flower that's found in Zambia that absorbs a specific protein at this specific time of year, for example.
Yeah.
This would have a problem in replication in the sense that not everybody can get a hold of this flower. And so the study itself doesn't get replicated because oftentimes it either requires some specialized knowledge or specialized tool that goes way beyond what other scientists would be willing or even capable of.
You're right. But the relevant piece here,
but here's the thing, right?
Piece here is sociology. That's the relevant.
Hold on. When it comes to sociology, there's a lot of very complex studies that require giant sample sets that make it very difficult to replicate unless if you plan on addressing the very same people again. So indeed, they do have a replication crisis.
Okay.
Now, does that mean therefore it's bad science? No.
No.
That's
I'm not saying that. So
okay, well, I just want to be clear because a lot of people, what they'll do is that they'll discount sociology.
I know, but can I say my point? So I don't think that sociology is per se a bad field, but I would just say it's not necessarily going to be as like rigorous as other fields of science. Do you know what like a hard science snob is? Like I'm a little bit of a hard science snob. I consider it a little bit of a softer science, right? So that's not to say that it doesn't have some value or something like that, or that it can't show you data, but it's just that often, because there are so many variables involved in these kinds of things, when you're doing them on a large scale, it's really hard to control for all of them. And also, the other thing is often... Do they not
attempt to control for other factors?
They attempt, but it's going to be typically... much more difficult. And the other thing is you can't check if you did it.
Do you think psychology
properly.
Is that a valid field? Like
yes, sure.
But
these are valid fields. I'm just comparing them.
But here's the thing, right? I understand that you just called yourself a hard science snob, which means to me what that means is you discount soft sciences as
no, that's not what it means.
Not as valid as hard sciences.
Well, yeah. Well, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have value, right? So, for instance, if someone has an anecdote,
no,
that
I
would
didn't
hold
say
less value.
I said not as valid as hard sciences. Do you believe that?
Well, it depends how you define the term valid. I mean that it doesn't have...
come on.
I'm serious,
like, let's not play the definitional game. What do you mean? What context would me saying valid versus not, or what context where there's a definition of valid that you're referring to versus what I'm referring to? I'm going to flip that out on you. What do you mean by valid?
Okay, so what I mean is if someone had a anecdote of something that happened, that would have an amount of validity. I'm not asking
for an example. I'm asking for a definition. Because for you, for whatever reason, you're asking for the specific definition of valid. So I ask simply, if you have a specific definition of valid where one of them would make sense to you and the other one would make less sense to you,
so
which one does make sense? What's the definition of valid for you?
Sure. So I would say the overall explanatory power of like a sociological paper would be lower than like...
That's another example. That's not explaining to me your definition of valid. So I'm going to go back to it, right? Because obviously we're not really actually interested in what the definition of valid is. What we're actually interested in is whether or not that you discount sociology as not as valid as traditional hard sciences, as you called it. I think that's silly. To say that, like,
hold on. I think you're misrepresenting my position a little bit.
Okay, so then don't obfuscate when I'm trying to talk to you directly. I give you a very simple question. Don't obfuscate it by asking for the definition of a commonly used word. Answer what I'm trying to ask you. I'm asking you.
I'm
do
trying to
you
engage
consider
with you
sociology to not be as valid as hard sciences?
In the sense that it would have less explanatory power. It's not that I don't think it could be a relevant thing to cite, though.
And if it does have high explanatory power in the soft science, then you'd be okay with it?
Well, I'm saying it being a soft science inherently means it has less explanatory power. So I'm not...
Okay, well, one example...
And it's a relative comparison.
Okay, would you say, let me see here. Would you say, is the placebo effect, is that something that is that valid to you?
Yes, that's real.
All right, but that was discovered using a soft science.
Yeah, so I'm not saying a discovery is wrong because it's a soft science. So think about it like this, okay?
Well,
If
you
like you
said
could
overall
absolutely,
it has
yeah. So if
bad
I have,
predictive modeling.
yeah,
Yet when I bring up a model that is very clear in its prediction, you have no problem with it. Which means that if there is a soft science that leads to predictive outcomes, then you would be okay with that soft science. In order to remain logically consistent,
sure,
you would
yeah.
have to acknowledge that.
Well, no. Well, so yeah, and I think I've said that from the outset that I'm not saying
Okay, that's
sociology
all
being
right.
a softer
Great,
science inherently
great. So I
disqualifies
just
it
want to let you
from
know
research.
right now, that's all of soft science. That's every single soft science. Soft sciences require predictive capability, and if it doesn't align with reality, they throw it out and come up with another idea. That's what soft sciences do.
Well, yeah, I'm sure that that's the aim, but here's the thing, right? Here's one of the issues is that, for instance, let's say I'm studying a big phenomena, some kind of policy decision or something like that. There would be a lot of variables that you could use to explain it. And the thing is, right, is once you're done, there's no way of really verifying it. Like if I'm building a rocket ship, I know if my rocket ship works or not, right?
That's not true.
I don't,
it can
but
be
I don't
corroborated with
know.
additional study, and it is commonly all the time. And in fact, these soft sciences have to end up discovering the same thing across each separate field.
So, yeah, but I mean, so do you mean to tell me that you think that there's no difference in between physics and sociology, and that
I didn't
sociology
say that there wasn't a difference between physics and sociology. I didn't say that there was no difference between physics and sociology, but sociology definitely does provide a great deal of predictive power. It does. What I'm
doing a relative comparison.
The reason why I'm pushing back against the idea is well, this is a hard science, this is a soft science. It's really, really common for people to make that argument in the sense that they feel that there are fields of science that they fundamentally don't agree with for whatever political reason. And so the only way that they can try to answer for the cognitive dissonance is that they wholly discount all of social sciences and say, well, it's not as valid as hard science.
Yeah, so that's not what I'm doing here, though. I don't think that's my argument. I actually think we agree more than you think. So what I'm saying here is not that sociology has no explanatory power. I'm doing a relative comparison between sociology and other disciplines, and I cited specific figures on how a lot of those studies, with regard to their design, do have an issue with the replication. So, don't you think it would be concerning if out of 985 sociology papers in the American Journal of Sociology, American Sociological Review, and Social Forces, that between 1970 and 2020, that only 6 would even mention the word replication? I think that would be fairly concerning, right? That would be a problem kind of baked into the design.
No.
Now, that's not to say... No?
Correct.
Oh, you agree with me, right?
No, I don't agree with you.
So what's the issue with what I said there?
Well, because when you understand in the terms that I've laid out regarding the replication crisis, you realize, this is like a nothing burger. People are just using this to wholesale discount entire fields of science.
No, because with regard to other disciplines, there is I'm not saying that the replication crisis can't exist universally, but do you think it exists within each discipline equally?
What makes something a soft science versus a hard science?
I think that a soft science, so it's really a relative comparison. So there's not going to be a clear line of delineation.
There is a clear line of delineation.
So you have a definition you're already operating under?
Yep.
Okay. Well, tell me what you mean then.
A soft science is dictated on too many variables to take into account. When, for example, you're referring to, say, the social aspects of the human mind across cultures, that would likely be a mix of sociology as well as neurology. This would be a soft science. There's thousands of variables to take into account regarding anybody's experience regarding the human mind. Does that make it any less valid? No. It just means that there's a lot of variables, and you have to often extrapolate or simplify things in a way that lead to an explanatory power. And it gets to the point where it's like, okay, well, we have lots of other people doing the same exact thing, or they're trying to discover something about that particular portion of the field. And then they are able to find, after their discoveries, something that possesses explanatory power, and some will have greater explanatory power than the other. That's what becomes the consensus.
Okay, but do you not think it would be concerning if the effect size is reduced by half?
When it comes to, say, a physics paper, you could take, for example, 10, 20, 30, 100 variables. Right. And in the math, in the equations, it's even less. 1, 2, 3 variables to take into account. Very, very easy to at least address. When it comes to sociology, there are thousands. And so that's what makes it a soft science. There's too many variables to take into account. And so they have to extrapolate. All right. And so that's the difference. So, but this doesn't make, again, the soft science any less valid. And also, just FYI, physics also has huge replication crisis. Why? It's really hard. It's really hard to get a CERN 2.0, right? It cost billions of dollars to make CERN 2.0. You're not going to be able to replicate those experiments properly unless if you did make a CERN 2.0. But we look at, say, the current quantum model, the dominant model, and we acknowledge its existence, and and we use it in studies because it has a great deal of explanatory power.
Yeah. So let me just give you a quick series of questions. Okay. So do you agree with me that these studies are conducted by humans?
Yes.
And you agree with me that humans can make mistakes, right?
Yes.
And do you agree that the more variables that a person would either have to account for would amplify the possibility of a potential mistake? Do you agree with that statement?
Repeat that. I didn't follow.
Yeah.
That.
Do you think that the more variables within a study would increase the chance that the human conducting the study will mess up on at least one of the variables? Like there might be something that they're not accounting for, or they might account for one improperly if there are more of them.
No, you extrapolate and simplify. That's what you're doing.
Well, yeah, but okay. So, do you think
because there's too many variables to account for? You just try to single out common covariate factors, and then get to a result.
Yeah. So I'm asking you if you have the same scientist doing a similar discipline, and he's doing one study that has say 5 variables versus one that has 5,000. Do you think it is more probable that he will mess up in the latter?
Mess up? Like, no, it's about the same. You still have to match through peer review. And so people are going to be checking your work to determine whether or not that it works.
Well, I mean, have you not seen, yeah, but I mean, even peer review, if they're, sure, that helps, but let's say that they're verifying everything. Is it possible that there can still be some error that would be maintained past peer review?
Sure.
Like, is that logically possible?
Yes.
Okay. And if you have to peer review even more variables, would the chance not go up the more variables that there are that you're peer reviewing.
Like more error yeah, sure. Things can be more error prone with more variables, sure.
Okay. So then wouldn't the necessary conclusion be that if a discipline involves a lot more variables, the chance of error, like the chance of an important variable not being accounted for or miscalculating one of the variables would increase as you would increase the amount of variables?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so that's all I'm saying, is that social science has more variables because it's doing these really complicated things.
Do you understand the differences? The difference is that I don't discount sociology as like less valid because there are more variables to take into account for. What I do is I acknowledge, okay, there's predictive power behind sociology. I pay attention to sociology because I know it has predictive power, just like I do any other science, from economics, the soft science, psychology is soft science, sociology, soft science. We take all of these things for granted and even take them very seriously and even form policy decisions around the soft science.
Sure.
It's just as valid as a physics paper.
Okay, sure. Well, so what I would say is that I also don't have like an issue with sociology as a discipline, but I just
just recognize it as not as valid, which means you have an issue with it.
It would necessarily be more prone to error if there's more variables involved. So I think it would be important
that doesn't make it
as a layman to really scrutinize the data, right?
Do you
agree with me that we should scrutinize the data? I agree with you.
Listen, specifically, unless if you are trained in that field, no, you should not be scrutinizing the data. Absolutely not.
Well, no, shouldn't I be figuring out because don't I need to interpret it and figure out how it would even be applied?
No, what you need to do is listen to people who do understand it and then interpret it.
Well, yeah, but the data. But the data doesn't give you a policy
You're not a trained sociologist.
Right? I'm not. But the data does not give you a policy prescription. So when they're trying to tell you some covariate factor, do you agree with me that the data does not give you a policy
I don't even think.
prescription?
Stop, please. When, for example, the data is trying to tell you that there are other covariate factors, right? That word doesn't even mean anything to you. Why? Because you haven't studied it. You don't know what it's all about. It's like you pick up an algebra book and you're in elementary school learning arithmetic. You wouldn't know what's going on. So no, you're not equipped to critique it or even question what it is saying. You just need to, you can try to read it and do your best to try to understand each word that's being said. But ultimately, in order to critique any of these papers, you need to be trained in that particular field. Otherwise, you're literally a caveman banging rocks against sticks. Like you don't know what's going on.
Well, yeah. So my argument is not that you should necessarily dismiss these things without having any knowledge, but it is that people should probably look at these tests and or these studies and at least try to understand the data that they're looking at. Now, it's true that not everyone necessarily knows those terms. That's true. But, like, if these things are important insofar as we are making policy prescriptions using these things, it's important that we have more than a surface level understanding of what these things would say, right? Like we would have to at least look at it a little bit
correct.
And have a rudimentary idea of what they're getting at,
the scientists who are actually experts in the field to translate it for laymen to understand, which is typically what happens regarding sociology or any other science for that matter.
Yeah. Right. Well, so I agree.
I'm not I'll read a paper, but heck no, there's no freaking way I'm going to be equipped to be able to critique that paper. There's no freaking way. I mean, the only critique I could potentially provide would be like, oh, look, who's funding this paper. That would probably be about as far as I could particularly go in terms of like trying to discuss their variables, their factors, like everything that's wrong with the particular paper or their methodology. I would, and this is coming from somebody who has his bachelor's degree, and I've read lots of papers.
Yeah, but I mean, if you had knowledge on a specific area, right? Like, if you did understand those terms, then you would be able to come up with a critique, right? Like, we're not just going to do credentialism.
No. Well, if you are also educated in the field, a lot of people, what they are is that they'll be like armchair educated, where it's like, I'm armchair educated, by the way. I have no doctorate.
Okay.
I'm not an expert in my field. I mean, I know a good deal of computers, but I would like compared to what? Like a computer science professor who is a doctorate in computer science. I don't stand a chance. I don't know anything. I just have a bachelor's in management of information systems. I have no capability of handling somebody who's at that level.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, the way I think about sociology or something like that is like, if you had a sample size of say 3 people who were like, hey, First Amender called me a mean name at the park or something silly, then I would say, okay, that seems like, decent evidence. But if I had 10 people who said it, then that would be even better evidence. And that's how I consider sociology. So I'm not saying that it doesn't predict things. I would just say that that there are some issues when you get into really large social phenomena because of just the sheer amount of variables. And then I think that and as I've shown you, like I think that a lot of these studies do run into issues where their effect sizes will actually decrease. So like a lot of the R values that they'll have will be halved according to the Open Science Collaboration, and also, I mean, here's the other thing too, right? Is like if one of these studies comes out and it has a pretty low R value,
bro, what is an R value?
Wouldn't that be kind of problematic?
What is an R value?
Yeah, an R value is the measure of probability. Or, well, more accurately, like the measure of like variance, I suppose.
What is the why don't you express to me your correlations? What is a high, strong positive correlation or strong negative correlation? What are your what numbers? What are the ranges of R values?
Yeah, so like if you had an R value from like 0 to 0.05, that would have like virtually no effect. If you had one of about 0.1, that'd be like tiny, so that's going to be, I think, like about like 1% variance. If you have 0.2, then that's going to be smaller, about
0.1 is a 10% variance, but okay.
What?
A 0.1 would be 10%. It's anywhere between -1 and 1. Right? A 1 would be a perfect positive correlation, as in one increases
the other one. No, I said 0.1, sir.
If you're talking about a -1, it's a perfect negative correlation. If you're saying 0.1, that's not a 1%, that would be 10%. 0.1 is 10% of a 1. If you wanted 1%, it would be 0.01.
Well, no, I'm talking about percent variance.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to point out to you that...
I understand that would be 10%. I'm just talking about the percent variance, though.
Yeah, all I'm doing is saying, listen, you're not formally educated, right?
I clearly understood what R values were. Like, that was trying to be an ambush question, and I knew what it was.
It's not an ambush question. I'm simply saying you and I are not equipped to critique these papers. Wouldn't you agree?
Listen.
Wouldn't you agree that we are not equipped to critique these papers?
Well, I would say that we have to have some lens for interpretation, no? I'm not saying
the best that I could do for a lens of interpretation would be I listen to an expert that is explaining in a layman way that I can understand, and then I can interpret it based on that. That would be my interpretation or your interpretation.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean,
So I
agree,
ask you again, I ask you again, are you equipped to critique these papers?
Listen, you're gonna hate me for saying this, okay? But I actually do need I am engaging with you in good faith here. I'm gonna need a little bit more granularity, okay? I really would like for you to define what do you mean by equipped.
I mean, be able to read the paper, fully understand everything that is going on, and be able to understand
fully understand
co-founding factors.
You wouldn't fully understand
no, you would not. Exactly. You're not
you wouldn't
equipped.
fully understand it. But there could be portions
just
that
FYI,
you would understand, right?
Yeah, sure. So FYI, we are not equipped to critique these papers.
Yeah, well, if you're saying critique means to fully understand it. What I'm talking about, though, is how I would interpret
oh my goodness,
the paper. Yeah, so I'm talking about, if I were to look at the value, I would at least need to have an idea of what that would mean, right?
All right, how about this? Equip is just referring to, we are supplying you with the necessary items for a particular purpose. In the sense of what I'm referring to is that you are already supplied with the necessary knowledge for the purpose of that paper.
Yeah. So
are you equipped to being able to interpret that paper, these doctorate level papers?
You wouldn't be able to understand the entirety of it, but there would be some parts that some people who...
I need you to shake whatever we just said earlier and rethink it and realize what I'm referring to I'm referring to the necessary knowledge. Do you have the necessary knowledge to critique the papers?
Not the totality of it, no.
Yes, wholeheartedly. Well, you should, in order to be intellectually honest with ourselves, the only way that you're going to be able to critique a particular paper is if you yourself also have a doctorate in that field. That's the only way.
I don't think necessarily.
100%. Because you don't know what you don't know. When you are taking, say, a college courses to get a doctorate, you're going to be taking classes that you wouldn't necessarily know about if you were informally educated. The only way that you're going to be operating at the level of a doctorate is if you actually went through the course material required in order to get into that field.
Well, if you
in fact, the only way that you can even get a doctorate is that you have to have a dissertation of some novel thing in that field. Meaning, in order for you to have that doctorate, you have to understand that field in its entirety, because that's where other doctorates are at. They fully understand the field that they're in, and they're discovering new things as a result of that. That's what makes them a doctor. So, again, when a paper is released and they're giving you this information that they've spent all that time learning and discussing, us sitting there critiquing it, we're morons. We have no idea what's going on.
Well, I'm not even really framing what I'm saying as a critique. I'm just saying, so for me, it's interpretation, right? Like, you don't have to understand the totality of something to understand certain parts. For instance, if I read a paper that said, whatever variables they're measuring, say it had an R value of 0.7, I would say, okay, that's pretty decent predictive power, right? So and that also means, conversely, that if it had a pretty low R value, like, 0.02, I could be like, okay, well, this seems like kind of low predictive power. So if someone prescribed something based on that data, I would say, well, the predictive power of that seems kind of low. That's more what I'm saying. I'm not framing it as a critique, just to clarify.
Okay. Well,
does that make sense?
Okay. Well, saying something is a soft science is kind of a nothing burger, number one. Number two, super triggering for me in the sense that whenever I hear somebody say that, I go, okay, they're discounting the science in order to ignore it. Every single time.
Well, I mean, didn't you agree that soft science is a thing?
Yes, but it doesn't make it invalid. It's
I
perfectly valid. There's
you.
nothing wrong.
I think we agree here.
With soft
I think
sciences.
we agree. I'm just saying. I'm just pointing it out. Anyway.
Anyway, that's all I have for you.
Well, no. So I wanted to actually get into. I feel like we went on a very long tangent
We're
here.
actually
I wanted to get
35.
into the actual,
we're 5 minutes past, but I would like to have a further conversations if you want.
Okay.
But we should probably end it here.
Okay, fair enough.